the more in touch you become with your body, the easier it is to listen to your body. So when your body tells you like you need to take a break, you need to rest a little bit, it's much easier to listen.
We're here with Parker Hurley, so welcome. We're really excited to have you here. And what's really interesting is you wear many hats. So model, writer, creator, private trainer, yoga instructor. How do you juggle all of your various passions and roles?
As best as I can. I think it's really important to have a morning practice. Every morning I wake up, I have a dog, I walk my dog first thing, and then I come home and sit down and meditate for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And then directly after that, I make a cup of coffee. And then I have about 30 minutes dedicated to morning pages, which is from this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And that's been like basically my Bible for probably like the past 10 years. So that really grounds me in the beginning of the day. And also I plan my day out, sometimes the night before, and then also again in the morning if I have time. And a lot of those things kind of run together. They all supplement one another. But another huge, just like integral part of not only my physical health, but also my mental health is exercise and movement. So I'm moving a lot, and I think that's important.
Absolutely,
Just
keeps
keep
you
moving.
consistent. So what can you recommend to our current students who are also juggling a lot, such as IIN schoolwork, a job, raising a family, a social life?
Again, I think meditation is vital. And the more healthy choices you make, the more they compound. So you exercise, you want to eat something that's going to benefit your body, not something that's going to slow you back down. You eat something that's going to benefit your body, you want to drink water, you drink a bunch of water, you're flushing out your system. Like those healthy choices just compound and compound and compound on one another. So I think that that's super important. And it can be easy, maybe not so easy, but like one bad choice can really kind of send you into a spiral. So you want to get back on track as fast as you can. Spending time with people, like getting out into the world, empathizing with other people too, understanding that like everybody is going through their own struggles and that your struggle may feel like it's incredibly overwhelming, but guaranteed that there are other people that are going through the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how can they maintain their balance and still pursue their passions with momentum?
I've found that the more I move in the direction of my passion, just personally, the more I want to continue to work on it. So again, this idea of like just making healthy choices and also understanding that sometimes like I am doing a lot all the time. I'm constantly moving. And the more in touch you become with your body, the easier it is to listen to your body. So when your body tells you like you need to take a break, you need to rest a little bit, it's much easier to listen. And in terms of balance, I think that I also really like to encourage my clients and my students to really like work when it's time to work in terms of movement or in terms of like hustling on their dreams, to work, and then rest. And rest equally as hard, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because sometimes resting can be pushing yourself outside of a comfort zone as well, as much as doing that work.
Yes.
People aren't used to taking a rest.
I have a designated, Sunday is rest day, and Sunday is also dedicated to going to what I call a spirit oasis. So something that like refills your spiritual well. I like to go to the botanical gardens here in Miami, and no matter what's going on in the day, like I always make time to go there and just kind of settle. And I always feel better afterwards.
It's amazing. Making peace priority. So that's great.
Totally.
Yeah. You use the term human hero in your training. What does human hero mean for you, and how can our students apply this idea to their coaching and throughout their personal lives?
So human hero is just like an idea that I came up with probably about 2 years ago, and I'm still figuring out what it means. I have an idea, of course, what it means to be a human and what it means to be a hero, and I like the idea of partnering those two things together because it's something that we can all relate to. We're all human beings. And also this idea that like, as a human being, we're not perfect, we're gonna mess up, we're gonna fall, we're gonna fail, but then we have this something, whether it's faith or it's a lot of it is just like believing in yourself and stepping into the role of the hero of your life, because I really think life is an adventure and we should live it as an adventure. And a lot of the times with like superheroes and all these kind of forms of entertainment, really, like the word superhero means above or beyond hero, and superhuman means above or beyond human. So that kind of like takes away our power. So in creating this word or this phrase or this idea, human hero, it's like something that's relatable first and then something that's inspiring second. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes that pressure off of us that I feel we're always putting on ourselves to be perfect. It's
Right.
We can be just as great with just accepting who we are.
Right. You're
and moving
human
forward with
first.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the concepts that we teach at IIN is primary food, things that nourish us that aren't actually food, such as spirituality, exercise, and relationships. So how do you personally feel that physical exercise nourishes us?
Physical exercise has been my greatest ally in battling a lot of mental health issues. I think that we, as a society, kind of shy away from talking about it. And I've dealt with mental health issues since I was a little kid. So of all the different things that you can do to change your mindset, healthy ones, unhealthy ones, I think the most efficient, the cheapest one, just overall the best one that you can possibly choose is moving your body and exercising. So I have made that a priority throughout my entire life, because I went from being a very depressed kid to kind of finding who I was through exercise. And at first it was finding myself through exercise because there was this sense of validation that came from it. And then once that kind of fell away, I went through an injury that really kind of forced me to look at myself and understand that I am not my body.
Yeah.
So it's just something that I'm always able to come back to, and it's something that I can control. So I would encourage everyone to move.
And it's readily accessible. You know?
Yeah, anywhere. There's no reason not to move.
Right.
There's always something you can do.
Which is great, because that leads into our next question. How would you coach someone who is eager to get into physical shape, yet is intimidated by exercise, especially after years of avoiding it?
That makes me think of a client that I have. She's 76 years old, and basically what we do is we just get together and we walk. We take like long walks. Sometimes we do a little bit of resistance band work, but she's always inside all day. Her husband's a little bit older than her and has a really challenging time to move. So we just get together, we take long walks around the park. It's really nice for her to just be out in the sun. So for anyone that is having a challenging time, whether they're having a tough time finding time for their movement practice, or they're making excuses, or maybe they have some injuries they're working with, there's so many different ways you can start. Just starting is what's important. And starting could be going for a walk. Going for a walk. And there's also like all the different classes. There's just so many ways to move. You can be part of a community. You can create it on your own. You can do it online. It's so accessible. So it's actually more of a challenge not to move than it is to move, in my opinion.
That's an amazing way to think about it.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture today when people unfortunately are sitting so much, where they're stuck indoors and movement isn't part of their daily activity. So making that transition and reframing it in that perspective is amazing. So I think that's great. What are 2 or 3 things that you do every day to stay grounded and mentally, physically, and spiritually fit?
Meditation, which I mentioned before. I do that twice a day normally, first thing in the morning and then usually before I go to bed at night. I spend time with my dog. She really grounds me. Whether it's just like taking her to the park or just specifically dedicating time to her within the schedule, because I think it's important. I mean, I can't speak to parents. I can only imagine what that's like to have that level of responsibility. But I think that your life really does change when you have to be responsible for something other than yourself. And something that I write about a lot is like, start with a plant, and then maybe get a goldfish, and then cat, dog, and then eventually have a family. So I think it's kind of prepping yourself. I have an altar in my apartment that I say a prayer to, usually before I go to bed, or when I'm needing guidance. only within the last couple of years have I started to develop a practice with faith. And I don't think you have to label it as this or that. It could be cosmic energy, source energy, God, whatever. It's just, I think it's really important to understand that there is something at work that is greater than us and that orchestrates things in a really beautiful way. And having faith that even when it seems like it's not a beautiful way and it's chaotic, that it's just kind of flushing out and shifting and moving and getting us back to where we belong and where we can be.
Yeah. And for us to trust that intuition and kind of follow those messages as well and that guidance. So.
And this made me think about something that you asked earlier. The more that I pursue what it is that I'm passionate about, meaning bringing this idea of human hero to life and really sharing movement with as many people as I can, I get signs. Like, I call it a spark. It's like a little moment where, and I'm usually emotionally overwhelmed with gratitude to the point where I cry, because I'm just like, okay, I'm doing something right. Like, I'm on my path, and I'm getting these little bits that are like, keep going. And it usually comes in a moment when I really need it. And I think that those signs show up. You just have to be open to them.
Yeah, that's really inspirational. I'm glad that you shared that. What is your nutrition and fitness regimen like?
I became a fitness professional at age like 20. I basically was tired of being bullied in school. I was picked on a lot. And then that was the original catalyst for getting me moving and built a lot of confidence from it. And then I was actually in acting class once, and we had to do this exercise where we had to close our eyes and we had to do a sentence completion. And the teacher asked me, he picked me first, and I was probably wearing a tank top, and I was probably like, at this point, like really into like weight training. So I was like, big guy. And he said, Parker, and I was ready for his question. He said, I wear this armor because, and I was just like, ooh, he got me. and it really like, it resonated with me. So I think that finding this balance between, because there's a big difference between being healthy and being fit from my understanding. Because I have a lot of clients and they're like, I want to be fit. And I'm like, well, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
So in terms of my physical practice and nutrition, again, through trial and error, I know what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and I really focus on what works, and I try to stay away from what doesn't. But at the same time, as a human, when I mess up, I don't beat myself up over it, and sometimes I treat myself. And that's what I really appreciate about integrative nutrition too, this idea of bio-individuality.
Yeah, and that's so important, because that's really, I think, the most realistic approach, and that's what's going to allow people to maintain this momentum with taking care of themselves from many different areas, rather than just staying on the steadfast path of being super disciplined and maybe depriving themselves in some areas that they're not aware of. So,
and not just in terms of, I agree 100%, and not just in terms of nutrition, but also in terms of like physical exercise too.
Absolutely.
I think it's really good to like get out of your comfort zone, specifically sometimes, and do things that throw you off balance. And also understanding that like, there's no one set path to achieving, unless you're like, you want to run a marathon, you go run. You want to be a swimmer, like a professional swimmer, you go swim. But I think it's the more well-rounded you can be,
Absolutely.
the more versatile, the better you're going to feel in all aspects of your life.
Absolutely. And even you hear these other professional athletes in, training for a marathon or for the Olympics in a particular sport, they're very well-rounded, and they do yoga, they do functional stretching, they do all these other activities because it does that. It makes them more well-rounded and able to do their sport at a higher level. So I think that's great that you made focus on that. I love your Instagram post where you mentioned being at a point in your life where you are always questioning everything and exercising self-realization. Can you elaborate on this a bit? And how does questioning everything tie into self-realization?
I'm very, very interested in Japanese culture. And one of my big goals that's tied to the book that I'm writing is going to Japan and climbing Mount Fuji. I have this idea of, it's called Mount Must, and like we all have this thing, this purpose, this passion that we're moving towards. And those sparks, those sites of inspiration, they are leading us there. And not only do I understand it's a metaphor, but also like it's a real place in the world for me. And there's this idea, there's a Zen Buddhist idea called beginner's mind, where like you're always starting from the bottom. Like every day, you just understanding that like you know nothing, and that opens you up to being just as receptive as possible, so that you're constantly learning, you're constantly engaged, because you're like, I don't know anything. I want to absorb as much as I can. There's that idea that I try to bring into my practice as much as I can. And then there's also this idea, or it's a phrase, it's called ikigai. And ikigai is when you're able to get lost in what it is that you're doing, whether it's gardening or drawing. For me, it's drawing and writing, or sometimes it's my movement practice, where you like look at your watch and you're like, 5 hours have gone by. Yeah. So that has been something that I try to, the more I can get into that state, the better I feel. And also just letting go of this idea of like time. And I always say keep moving, but like sometimes that movement doesn't necessarily mean physical. It can mean spiritual, emotional. And the more that I would say this to everybody, the more you can get in that flow state, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you've offered some incredible insight for everyone, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared with your experience. We've loved having you here, and it's been a great experience. It was great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Jamie, and I work on the education team here at IIN. I work on the post-grad courses, and I also work on the curriculum for the Health Coach Training Program. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit like below. You can also stay in the loop by clicking subscribe. Finally, comment below to keep the conversation going and join your IIN community on an ongoing basis. Thanks again for watching.